Many people believe that when a woman goes into labor, an ocean of water just starts pouring out of her vagina, followed by painful contractions. But actually, this only happens to about 1 in 6 women. In this video, you'll learn what your water bag is, what amniotic fluid is, what to expect if your water breaks, what to do when your water breaks, and when to go to the hospital. I'm Annabelle Carney, childbirth educator and physician assistant, and on this channel you'll find me talking a lot about pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and click that subscribe button and ding that little bell down below so you don't miss a video. So what is your water bag anyways? So your water bag is the amniotic sac right here, and it's attached to the placenta. And baby lives in here and floats around in amniotic fluid, aka water. And there's actually 2 layers of the amniotic sac, 2 thin membranes. And the innermost layer is called the amnion, and it touches baby. And then the outermost layer is the chorion. But by about 14 to 16 weeks, they've actually fused together. But that's why you may hear providers say your bag of waters, plural. So what is amniotic fluid made of? So early on, it's mainly water and solutes from mama, from you, but later at about 20 weeks, it changes to mainly urine from baby and some lung secretions. Fluid is constantly circulating because baby is continuously swallowing and peeing it out, so it's just being recycled throughout the entire pregnancy. So how much fluid is in the amniotic sac? So fluid typically increases steadily up until 36 to 38 weeks, and you end up with roughly about a quart of fluid, or 900-ish milliliters. And then it slowly starts to decrease until you give birth to your baby. And a cool fact about your colostrum that you produce is that it smells very similar to amniotic fluid, helping baby recognize your scent and initiate breastfeeding. So what's the purpose of amniotic fluid anyways? Amniotic fluid has a ton of different functions, but there are 4 main ones that I just want to briefly go over. So the first one being is that it protects and cushions baby from any trauma while in your belly for 9 months. The second one is that it protects the umbilical cord and prevents it from being compressed so that it can continuously deliver nutrients and remove waste. Third one is that it maintains a constant temperature around baby, and the fourth one is that it protects your baby from any infection. So what happens when your water breaks? So that cinematic gush that you might be familiar with actually happens more often during labor and not before labor begins. Once the cervix has dilated a decent amount and that sac is now left more exposed. So then that sac kind of creates this little bulge down into the vagina, and baby's head is pressing against it, and with each contraction then can create this little pop and gush, just like a water balloon. Now a lot of people do say that once their water breaks, contractions tend to get stronger and feel more intense, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to meet your baby in X amount of minutes. It just means that, you know, your baby is right around the corner, basically. Now, if the sac tears either between the 2 layers, the chorion and the amnion, or higher up in the sac in the uterus, then you'll likely experience a very slow leak, like so. You can see that. And if contractions haven't started by now, you may be unsure if it's either an increase in discharge, if you peed yourself, or if it really is amniotic fluid. If you're unsure if you actually peed your pants or if it's amniotic fluid, then one quick test that you can do is place a liner in your panties, go empty your bladder, then lay down for about 15 minutes, then stand back up and walk around, and then check and see if your panty liner is soaking wet or a tiny bit wet. Another thing that you can do is, while you're standing up, do a quick cough and see if anything comes leaking out. If your water does break and you're not at the facility that you're giving birth at, then the first thing you need to do is stay calm. The second thing I want you to do is remember TACO: time, amount, color, and odor. Note the time that your water broke, note the amount that came out, note the color, and the odor. What does it smell like? Typically, amniotic fluid is odorless and maybe slightly sweet. So now I want to go over a few variations of what normal and not normal look like. So the first one I want to show you is what normal amniotic fluid looks like: thin, clear, and odorless. Second variation of normal is thin, slightly yellow tinged. And the third variation of normal is thin and slightly pink. The first variation of abnormal includes amniotic fluid that is thin but is slightly brown. Another variation of abnormal includes amniotic fluid that kind of resembles pea soup. Both of these are actually signs that your baby has taken their first poop in utero, aka meconium. And the last variation of abnormal includes amniotic fluid that is red in color. This could be a sign that there's something going on with your placenta. Once your water breaks, yes, there is an increased risk for infection, but there is no hard and fast rule regarding at which point the rate of infection increases. So that's why your provider likely has their preferences for when they want you to come in if your water breaks. And if labor hasn't begun and it's been past 24 hours, there's a primary concern for infections such as chorioamnionitis and endometritis. But the bottom line is the best way to avoid infection is by not sticking anything up there. Yes, this means no sex, no fingers, no tampons, nothing. And if you call your doctor just for some peace of mind and they say that yeah, they can come check you out, you may want to consider avoiding any internal exams, as putting anything up there could introduce new microbes or push in pre-existing microbes. And if you are unsure that your water broke, your provider can easily do a couple of non-invasive exams. So the first one that's commonly done is just taking a sample of that fluid onto nitrazine paper, which checks that pH of the fluid to see if it's amniotic fluid or not. The second one that's also commonly done is taking a sample of the fluid, letting it dry on a microscope slide, and seeing under the microscope if it dries in a fern-like pattern. And sometimes they'll do both just to be sure. When to call your provider immediately and head to the hospital. The first one being is if your water breaks before 37 weeks. Second one being is if your water breaks and it looks green or brown, just like I showed you earlier. The third one is if your water breaks and it's followed by a gush of bright red blood. The fourth one is if your water breaks and you develop a fever in the time that you're waiting at home. And lastly, if your water breaks and you can feel a bulge in your vagina, or you can see and feel a bulge in the vaginal opening, then definitely call your provider, because you're likely experiencing something called cord prolapse, which is rare but very serious. So there you have it. You now know that your baby lives in this 2-membrane sac and is surrounded by amniotic fluid that has so many benefits. You now also know that it's rare for your water to break before going into labor, but if it does, you remain calm and remember taco. There's no need to rush to the hospital because labor will typically begin within 12 to 24 hours, but just remember, nothing in the vagina at all. You also now know variations of normal amniotic fluid color and when to go to the hospital. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and give it a thumbs up for me and subscribe to my channel. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.